What's up, everyone? So today we're going to look at a comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy A71. And I understand that these are two very different phones from two different phone categories into separate price ranges. So essentially, you can buy two of these A71s for the price of one S20 Plus. But if you're like me, I was looking at what kind of Samsung phone I can get away with while not sacrificing too much for speed and performance. And the first phone I picked up was actually the A51, and I used that for about a month. And I realized that that phone was just a little bit too slow for my everyday use. So next, I picked up the A71, and this phone is a lot faster than the A51. So in every single day use, you probably won't notice a huge difference in performance between these two phones, the A71 and the S20 Plus. Obviously, the S20 Plus is faster. Now, this is the Exynos version because one, it was purchased on Amazon, which means that it doesn't have 5G, it's the international version, but two, it has dual SIM. And that's something that's really important to me as I run two SIM cards. So both of these phones were purchased on Amazon, and I'll leave links in the description below as to where you can pick one up. And both of them run on dual SIMs. So first, for the A71, I really like this phone. I think it's a very underrated phone. Now, people talk about how the back is plastic and not glass, but honestly, between these two phones, you really can't feel the difference between this supposedly glass and then this glass-stick plastic back. I actually, just in terms of build quality and just feel in the hands, I prefer the A71. It feels nicer and it feels thinner. Even though on paper and on specs, both of these are, sub 8mm phones, but something about this phone, whether it's the plastic build or just the edges are a little bit different, it feels a lot thinner in the hands than the S20 and definitely thinner than the S20 Ultra. So using this phone was actually really nice. It's a little bit laggy, just sometimes. So if you, like for example, if you turn on the camera and sometimes if you snap photos really quickly, it can lag. And it doesn't take photos as fast as you can push the button like most flagship phones. And most of the time I found myself, if I take a photo quickly and I move the camera just a little bit, it turns out really blurry. So that was kind of annoying to me. And then I started realizing that because it only has one downward firing speaker, that the sound was okay. It was kind of loud, but it wasn't loud enough if you're viewing content like video on this phone every single day. And I started noticing a rattle from the speaker. So I don't know if it was just something from the speaker grill or something stuck inside of it. I tried to blow some air into it, but for whatever reason, it started having cracking and rattling sounds at louder volumes, especially if you listen to people talking on YouTube or something like that. It has this cracking and rattling sound. So I noticed that on a daily basis, and that kind of annoyed me to the point where I wanted to put the phone down and try a different phone. Now, another thing with this phone is it does have this fingerprint reader, and it's kind of hit or miss. And I know a lot of other people have talked about this, but it really only works sometimes, and only if you get your finger in that perfect spot, it'll work. And other times, like this, it just doesn't want to work at all. So that part of it is really hit or miss. And if you're trying to play with the face unlock feature, well, face unlock does work. I would say it's not as good as the iPhone's face unlock. It does just use this one forward-facing camera, and it recognizes your face most of the time. But I would say the issue is the speed. So the speed of actually lifting the phone up to the point where it recognizes your face is a little bit slow. So it does work, but usually it takes a good maybe 2 seconds. So it would be a black screen, you would raise it up, and then maybe after 2 seconds it would unlock. So I know these are first world problems, but when you're used to a flagship phone that unlocks almost instantly, it's something that you do notice. So you are able to set 3 fingerprints in this. So I've set, 3 of my fingers. So I always find myself, if one of the fingers don't work, then I would always go and maybe try another finger and then keep trying it until it works. So I would say that the fingerprint reader really just isn't that great. So as you can see here, it didn't even work for both of my thumbs. So that was one of the main reasons why I ended up switching out of this into this. Now, there's something about using a $500 phone that a lot of people are not talking about. A lot of the flagships nowadays are $1,000 or even $1,500, and yes, they're made of glass, but you really don't miss the glass with this. It feels solid in the hands. It has an AMOLED display, and everything about it just feels nice. And I think it's something about the mentality of using a cheaper phone that you actually use the phone instead of, putting it in a protective case or always afraid of taking it, bare out of your pocket or afraid of dropping it. So these phones actually, they come with cases and just out of the box. At least these international versions do, but I've never used it. I've never had to use a case on the A71 simply because I feel like, not to say that $500 is not a lot of money, but it's just a mentality that, if you do drop it, well, one, plastic is more durable than glass and it's not going to crack on you. But two, that, you can always buy another one. I mean, honestly, you can buy 2 of these for the price of that. So you can literally break one and then end up buying another one before you have to spend the money on the S20 Plus. So that was one of the main features why I really liked using this phone, is just the feel that, it's a solid phone, and right now the fingerprint reader is still not working. So I had to use a face unlock. But yeah, it's a solid phone, and I did really enjoy using it. But because of the one, the fingerprint reader, 2, the delayed camera, and 3, the speaker cracking a little bit, I wanted to switch. So then in comes the S20 Plus. Now the S20 Plus is their flagship. Even though this is the Exynos version, it's still really quick. And the main reason why I wanted to try this phone is the 120 hertz refresh rate. So I've used both of these, for about a month each, and the 120 hertz refresh rate is very noticeable. And I know a lot of people, they try this on camera, but you can't really see the difference unless you actually play with the phone in person. And when you do, mostly it's scrolling. Sometimes it's, some of the animations that you can see the difference in, but it does feel nice. And if you're spending $1,000 plus on a phone, you want to use all of the new features that it comes with. So because this has the 120 hertz display, the battery life is significantly less than the A71. So the A71 would last me at least a day and a half, if not 2 days. And that's quarantine days. So that's using your phone more than you would on a normal non-quarantine work day or something. So with the A71, I would never have to think about battery life. It was probably the phone with the best battery life that I've ever used in all the phones that I've used. And I've used the iPhone 11 Pro Max and a bunch of other phones. So this has a great battery life. But this one, even though it does have a 4,500 milliamp battery, it doesn't last that long. And from using both of these side by side, it's noticeable. Like this one is at 44% now, and I've only been using it for about 4 hours. And that's not 4 hours screen on time. That's just being awake for 4 hours. So something about the 120 hertz refresh really drains the battery life. And I have most of my apps, put to sleep in the background. I don't have very power intensive apps running. So I've also put, as you can see, a black wallpaper just to try to conserve power a little bit. But I still realize that I'm kind of a little bit anxious of the battery life. So it does come with wireless charging, and the back of it is glass. So if I'm in the vehicle or somewhere at home where I can just plop it down on a wireless charger, that does work. But overall, I'm not very impressed with how 120 hertz drains the battery. And if I'm going to turn it down to 60 hertz, and it just doesn't feel like I'm getting the most out of this flagship phone if I have to turn off one of its key features. So obviously, all other areas of this phone are better. So it has, the two stereo speakers, which I really enjoy. I find that the hole cutout for the S20 Plus is a lot smaller than the A71. It's hard to see because I have this wallpaper on it, but the black area around the A71's hole punch out is a lot bigger than the S20 Plus. And even just using the S20 Plus on a daily basis, everything about it is better. Now, there is one gripe I have with the Exynos processor version. So because this is the international dual-SIM Exynos processor version of this, it does tend to overheat. And I know a lot of other people have done comparisons on speed between this and the Snapdragon one, but in real everyday use, you're not going to notice a huge speed difference. It's a very fast phone, and that's all you need to know. But the overheating issue is actually an issue, to the point where when I use it, even for maybe a good 20 minutes or sometimes even 10 minutes, it overheats somewhere up here. So I don't know what's up here, but something up here overheats, and it's to the point where it's kind of uncomfortable to the touch. And I know it's not a deal breaker, it's not a huge deal, but if you're paying $1,000 for a phone, you kind of want a phone that doesn't overheat versus this A71, which is half the price, and it doesn't overheat at all. Like, it always feels really cool to the touch. But at the same time, this is running, a 60 hertz screen, and that's running a 120 hertz screen. So I'm sure if I turn this down to 60 hertz, I probably won't have the overheating issue. But again, I want to use all the features that it comes with. So that's something that you have to note if you're thinking about these two phones, is the overheating issue of the S20 Plus. Other than that, this has the waterproofing. So the IP68 rating, it kind of matters. I mean, we don't take these phones swimming on a regular basis, right? But even if you're showering, or watching YouTube when you shower or something, sometimes if the water just sprays into the single speaker grill on the A71, it kind of muffles the sound a little bit, because like those couple of holes right there, if this focuses, is all that you have that really, plays the sound out of the phone. But for the S20 Plus, you really don't have to worry about it. So I would say that the speakers on the S20 Plus is definitely a reason to get it. So it has the bottom speaker and a very thin top speaker up here that you can barely even see. So overall, I think both of these are great phones. And if money is not an issue for you, then I would say probably get the S20. But if you're kind of unsure, and if you're kind of afraid of dropping your phone, and you want to protect it, then I would definitely say that the A71 is a better choice. Because when you use a phone, you want to actually use it. You don't want to always be afraid that you would have to protect it, put it in, and this is one of the thinner cases, the one that it comes with. But if you get like an OtterBox or a Spigeon case or something like that, some of them are really thick. And that kind of takes away from the experience of a really nice designed phone. And I found that after using it for about a month, I found that I used the S20 Plus with a case most of the time. Versus when I was using the A71, I would almost never put it in a case. And I did drop it a couple times, just falling out of my pocket, and it was fine because the back is made of plastic. But the S20 Plus also comes with a case, and it's a thin one, probably one of the thinner ones out there. But, if you put this phone in a case, I guess it's okay. I guess, you have some of the edge rejection, so you're not touching the edges accidentally, but it does take away from the overall feel of the phone. So the phone was meant to be used bare, I feel, and if you do use it bare, you have to get rid of the anxiety that you're going to drop it. So another thing with this phone is that the back of it is, it's really shiny, and it kind of looks decent, but honestly, I don't think it looks as good as the A71. The A71 has this rainbow effect when you get it in a certain light, and it kind of has this, triangular checkered shape in the back. That's really nice. But the S20 Plus is just this high gloss back. Now, they say this is glass, but it doesn't even sound like glass. Like, it literally sounds like a plastic backing, and it's so prone to fingerprints. Like, you use it for just a little bit, and I have fairly clean hands. I like to wash my hands all the time, and I always wipe down my phones like 5 times a day. But this always has fingerprints on it. It's hard to pick up on the camera, but just trust me, it always has fingerprints on it. Now, listen to this. And then, listen to this. It's pretty much the same. Honestly, you cannot tell that this is glass and that this is plastic. And the edges, this is plastic on the A71, and this is aluminum. You can kind of tell, but not really. If you close your eyes and felt both of them, all you would feel is that the aluminum is a little bit slipperier. And this one's, feels a little bit more like plastic. But honestly, you wouldn't be able to tell. In everyday use, I would say that the A71 is overall a better built phone. It just feels nicer in the hands. And something about being plastic, it just feels a little bit lighter, and I think it is a little bit lighter than the S20 Plus, and it just feels more natural. And that's coming from only using flagships for maybe 5 to 6 years now. And I've noticed that a lot of the flagships, especially the iPhone, is getting thicker and thicker. And at first, I didn't really think it mattered. I thought, a thicker phone meant a bigger battery life and probably better performance. So what's a little bit extra thickness? Now, that was true, ever since the iPhone 6 and 7 and 8 and 10. But now with the iPhone 11, I've noticed that it's a little bit too thick for my liking, to the point where I'm noticing it. It kind of feels like a small brick in the hand. So that's why I went on this quest to search for a thinner Android phone. And you would have phones like the OnePlus 7 and then the A series. And I tried a couple of the A series phones. You can't sacrifice speed just to get a thinner phone. But with something like this, and I think this has a Antutu score of like 200 something thousand, 240,000 or something. That's plenty fast. Most of the apps that you're going to run are going to open instantly. And other than the camera issue and other than a little bit slower face unlock, I would say this phone is almost perfect. And I think $500 is the sweet spot for smartphones nowadays. And this phone, yes, it's a better phone, but it's also heavier and a little bit, it feels thicker. And maybe on paper it's not, but it feels thicker. Now, if you're comparing this to the S20 Ultra, hands down, the S20 Ultra is a brick, and this is a super light phone. But if you're comparing this to the A71, and after using it for a while, this still feels a little bit heavier and a little bit thicker. But overall, like I said, if money is not an issue for you, then I would say the S20 is probably the best buy right now. And if money is somewhat of an issue, and if you drop the S20, just ask yourself this. If you bought the S20 or the S20 Plus tomorrow, and then you dropped it, how would you feel? If you feel like you dropped something and that you're out some money, and you would get some anxiety from that, and it would kind of ruin your day, then I would say money is a factor for you. But if you are the type that you can buy this tomorrow and you can drop it, and you'll say, okay, well, I dropped it, that sucks, but I'm just gonna go buy another one, then get this phone. Overall, it's a better phone. But even for me, and I'm able to afford both of these phones, but I would say that for me, using the A71 is more comfortable. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about scratching it because the plastic doesn't really scratch, the sides don't scratch. And something about a cheaper phone just feels better for me. And another thing about the screen is that this one has the newest Gorilla Glass 6. And I believe this one has Gorilla Glass 3. And whereas that sounds like they're 3 generations apart, I actually think that the Gorilla Glass 3 is harder and more scratch resistant. Now, I think what Gorilla Glass did, and I could be wrong, but they started developing towards anti-shatter, anti-crack pieces of glass. So maybe this one shatters less easily, or it will survive a higher drop. But on a daily basis, if we're not dropping our phones every single day, the biggest thing that I was worried about, especially with the iPhone 11, was scratches. And I don't keep it in a pocket with keys or anything like that. It's in its pocket. It's in a pocket all on its own, but it's still scratched. Whether that's from the zipper on the pocket when taking it out of my pocket, or whether it's just being placed face down on a table or something, it's scratched. But this A71 doesn't. I think the older Gorilla Glasses are just more scratch resistant, and even micro scratches. I'm not talking about deep gouges in the screen, just micro scratches. This A71 doesn't have any after a month's use. Now, the S20 does have a couple of them. So something about the newer Gorilla Glasses, it's a little bit softer, and you can look this up online and do some research on it, but I think it's a little bit softer, and that's what makes it more shatter resistant, but it does have a little bit more micro scratches on it. And I think that's the biggest problem that most of us will face, and not just dropping the phone, but the small scratches on it. And the back of it, because it is glass, it's kind of hard to clean. No matter how much you wipe it, you always get some dust specks or some fingerprint marks, especially around the camera bump here. But the A71, you don't have that issue. Maybe because it's white, you have a lot more color options to choose from, but also because it's plastic. And because it's plastic, it doesn't attract fingerprints as much, and it doesn't attract the dust as much. Something about it, it just feels better. So if you haven't already kind of got, my impressions of these phones, I like the A71 better. If I could, I would use this phone all the time. I bought this phone for the 120 Hz refresh rate, and 120 Hz is amazing, it's great, but to use it at a sacrifice to the battery life is not great. And I would say that the S20 Plus probably would lose an extra 30% battery, if not more, to the 120 Hz refresh rate. It's noticeable. It's very noticeable. The good thing about this is the fingerprint reader does work a lot better. So I think one is an ultrasonic and one is an optical. And as I say that, it doesn't work. But trust me, it does work better. So I think this S20 Plus is the ultrasonic one, and I think this one is an optical one. So correct me if my terminology is wrong, but just from every single day use, and there's something wrong with my fingerprints today or something. Maybe I did too much housework, I don't know. Maybe they're a little bit chaffed or something. But I can't seem to unlock my phones today with my fingerprint. And these are my phones, I promise you. But oh, now this one works. But anyways, the S20 Plus works a lot more often than the A71. And even when you're setting up the phone, you kind of realize that because it makes you, register your fingerprint, you put it on and off and on and off. And you know how on the iPhone it tells you to adjust your grip, and every single time you put it on, it registers. For the A71, I'll literally have my whole thumb on the sensor and it won't register that it's a fingerprint. And that's just setting up the fingerprint. So probably out of 10 times, it would register it maybe 5. And it doesn't really register the tips of your thumb that well. It kind of registers the full thumb like that, but it doesn't really register if I just put the tip on it. So that's my experience with the A71. With the S20 Plus though, at least from using it, maybe it's just camera shy, but at least from using it, it unlocks almost every single time I use it. Honestly, there's something wrong with the fingerprint on my thumb or something. But normally when I use it, it always unlocks. Just take my word for it. So that's kind of my comparison of the S20 Plus and the A71. And, if I could, I would just keep the A71. Get these on Amazon. They're a lot cheaper. You could probably, like I said, I picked this S20 Plus for just sub $1,000 here in Canada. That's Canadian dollars. So if you're in the US, that's a lot less. And for the A71, I think it was just sub $500. So literally two of these for one of those. Now, there's really not anything else that I like to say about these phones. They're both great phones, but if you're looking for thin and light and durable and money's kind of an issue, use the A71. And money's not an issue and you just want the best of the best, get the S20 or the S20 Plus. Okay, so that's my review. Let me know if you have any questions. I've used both of these phones for a good month or so, and moving forward, I'm probably going to keep the S20 Plus in my pocket for at least another week or two, and then maybe I'll switch back to the A71. But like I said, dual SIM is very important for me. Otherwise, if dual SIM was not something that I needed, I would definitely get the Snapdragon version. I doubt that that one would overheat as much. It's a little bit snappier, and it has 5G, even though we don't have 5G here where I live. So if you have any questions, please leave me a comment in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer it. If you're on the ball between these two phones and kind of looking at the different features and wanted some more of my opinions on it, you can shoot me a message or drop me a comment down in the comment section below. Okay, so thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing if you like my content, and I'll see you in the next video.